Now, many plays include Parramatta Girls, a hugely successful production at Belvoir Street Theatre last year, Run Rabbit Run, about the community support for and legal battles around the South Sydney Rugby League team, and Watermark, about devastating floods and their aftermath in Katherine. Let's meet her now. Please welcome Alana Valentine. Welcome. The topics of the works that you've done have been very diverse and probably not things that people would go, oh yes, I expect to see a play about such and such, you know, a flood or a football team or a group of female detainees. You know, they're unusual topics. Did you choose them at least in part for that controversy value?
When Run Rabbit Run was on, which is the play about Souths, you know, all these women would come up to me and wring my arm and say, I hate football, but I really loved your play. and you know what they were saying is, you've surprised me. I had these ideas about what football fans were, and you've turned them around. And I wrote Run Rabbit Run because people kept saying to me, football fans are a bit, you know, they're inarticulate. They're obsessed with football. They don't care about real things that matter. And what I actually found was that this incredibly lucid group of sort of working class philosophers.
And I think one of the things that's important to understand about Run Rabbit Run, and indeed Parramatta Girls, is that they are substantially the words of the people themselves.
Run Rabbit Run was what I call pure verbatim, where you use the exact words, and Parramatta Girls was what I'd call massaged verbatim, which is I've interviewed them extensively, but I've created dramatic situations. I think that people are looking towards an authentic experience, and putting the real words of real people on stage does what I was talking about before, confounds expectations about how people really talk.
Presumably you must spend hours, days recording conversations that you have with people and so on. How difficult is it, in a sense, then to craft that into something which is a genuinely creative experience?
Well, it's impossibly difficult, and
and a huge achievement every time.
That's right, and that's where the great gifted artistry of the work comes in. No, I mean, I don't actually speak to people for days. I maybe speak to people for 40 minutes. I find that, like you would know this yourself, people don't get asked, why do you live the life that you do? What do you think about the world? What creates meaning in your life? What gives you joy? And so people love it when you sit down and say to them, you know, what do you think of things? And listening, which is what I do a lot of, is a great skill, you know, and you know that as a journalist. I'll start to maybe ask some difficult questions. Then I sort of do I don't know whether you would know what I mean, but I call it like the yarn event moment, where you go from being their friend to being their sort of, you know, oh my God, she's sort of turning on me a little bit.
Yes.
And
we're going to wait for a little while before we get to that moment.
Okay. And then what I do is turn it off, turn the recorder off. Oh, people think, oh, this beautiful experience I'm having is ending. So they start to tell you the really good stuff. You turn the recorder back on, and then I've got the stuff that they don't even necessarily... It sounds very Machiavellian, but what I'm doing is kind of getting people to say the thing that they forget they're talking to a playwright. Like you would, they forget they're talking to a journalist. Yeah, and get something that they hadn't necessarily known they even thought.
You spent a lot of time talking with people in Katherine about the huge flood. In that play, you crafted the language, but it was based on the real people that you talked to.
Yeah.
I thought maybe we could actually read just a little tiny bit of this play, just to show some of that very simple language.
Any community that's dealt with a really big disaster, the pain sits just below the surface. Most people say, we're fine, we're absolutely fine. You know, we dealt with it, it was horrible, but we're over it. So there was a lot of those stoic Northern Territory types who they weren't going to, you know, talk about their feelings immediately. So this scene is about a couple of the blokes that I met who were like that.
And I reckon
Richard's going to play one of those.
And I reckon the woman in this might just be a little bit like you doing an interview.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, she's some sort of counsellor, maybe a psychiatrist.
Anyway, let's have a little go at this. As I say, just very simple language.
Reckon you lost a lot of stuff in the flood?
Yeah, I did, yeah. Lost everything, me, but, that's okay.
Well, how can it be okay?
Well, because now I can get a whole lot of new stuff.
That's a good way to look at it.
Only way to look at it.
But there must be things that you're really gutted about.
Oh, not really. But see, I'm not much attached to material things.
Still must have been a twinge or two.
Oh, there were people who lost a lot more than me.
How about your photos? That must have hurt.
Oh, I thought it would, but then I thought, when do I ever look at photo albums? I'm just saying, I don't really look at them, and even if I do once, it's not often enough to be upset about.
So on the whole, you weren't affected?
I'm not saying that.
Well, what effect has it had on you?
Well, it's made me appreciate what I have more.
But that's not much of an effect.
Well, when people talk about tough times, I can say that I've been there myself.
But this was a major natural disaster.
But life goes on.
If you don't want to talk about it, just say.
Well, I am talking about it.
No, you're not. You're brushing it off.
Well, that's what you do.
Who's you?
Well, you don't dwell on it.
Why not?
Well, because what use is there in that?
I'm not asking you to wallow in it. I'm just asking if, just this once, we can talk about it a bit deeper than, life goes on.
Well, what do you want me to do? Cry?
Do you want to cry?
Maybe I did.
Did you?
What use is crying?
I don't know. Get rid of some hurt. Get rid of some of the pain.
Oh, that's just it.
What?
Well, you can't just get rid of it. It just sits there like a bloody useless lump.
Well, how do you know talking about it isn't going to change it?
Because you don't change 20 metres of water coming through your town. Really, with that very simple sort of language, all of a sudden, you've managed to summarise what a lot of people would imagine would be a really difficult situation.
Well, because it's all in... people don't ever say what they mean. People don't ever say really what they feel until you get them to a point of crisis, and then it comes out.
There are people who say, well, look, you're just using other people's words, their real words. So, are you a real playwright? Are you actually writing the stuff or not?
Well, yes, in fact, when I won the Queensland Literary Prize for Run Rabbit Run, one of the other writers, I should say it was the unpublished writer winner, it was a kind of encouragement prize, said to me, so you didn't really write it? And I graciously sort of smiled and ordered another martini, I think. No, look, the truth is this. As I said, I think there's a lot of skill to getting out of people what they don't even know that they want to say. The second thing is that people think that stories exist out there in the world. The South story played out in the public sphere. So we all know that Souths were taken out of the National Rugby League. This small football team took News Corporation to court and they won. So we sort of know that roughly. Why do we need to know anything else? Well, my play wasn't about that at all. My play said, let's take seriously for a moment, mostly men's, but all sports fans' obsession with sport, and look at what's underneath that. Let's look at why this is something really deep that people would give all their time and all their money and all their lives to. And so I don't think I'm just using other people's words. I think I draw those words out. I think I have the premise which says, what are we really investigating here? And I type them up, frankly. So, they're mine.